Hey folks, welcome back to Only Best Fancy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk about the absolutely grungy, twisted, strange, depressing, Machiavellian fantasy opening that is Mordew by Alex Pheby, and this is the first book in the Cities of the Weft trilogy. And this is a fantasy book in the vein of Gormenghast, with with characters who have the average morality, who have the morality of your average Game of Thrones characters. I really enjoyed this one. So, what is Mordew even about? So, the main character that we follow is Nathan Treves, who lives in is this child that lives in abject poverty in the slums of Mordew, scraping out a living by gathering the half-formed creatures that crawl out of the mud to eke out a living, while his mother entertains gentlemen callers, and his father dies of a horrific disease in the next room. Um, but Nathan has a power that makes him a threat to the master of Mordew, or the perfect tool. So, so for fans of alternate fantasy, this is definitely one to look at. Like I mentioned, it very much channels that degradation and decrepitude you get from Gormenghast. Um, but in addition to that, we get a very complicated fantasy drama that involves a diverse cast of characters who have this absolute rat's nest of agendas and motivations and ideals that they aspire to. They have their own goals and that just go in all sorts of twisted, crazy directions. Um, and it makes for like just really conflicting, compelling reading. So in addition to channeling so much of Peak and in terms of the characterization, almost like GRM, we have we also have like this almost Dickensian feel to it, with just the way these characters they're almost I the only word I can really touch on is aristocratic, but that's not quite the right word. The way they're very idiosyncratic in their portrayal. Um, it's just weird. Like these, there's no mistaking these individual characters for who they are and what they're up to. And it's a strange. What you could really summarize is that Mordew is a strange place that breeds strange people, and that very much comes across. Um, all that being said, like this is a book that very much has fun playing with fantasy tropes, because like we see that in the way that Alex Pheby just has some fun with what he gets up in this story. Like, what happens if the chosen one isn't quite up to snuff when he gets his call to adventure? When he gets this wise mentor, and what happens if the wise mentor isn't even interested in training him for the good of society? What happens if the princess makes a bad bet when she decides to marry for love as opposed to a political agenda? Things like that. Like Alex Pheby incorporates all of these things in just fun ways. I would say fun. More fun to see the execution, not so fun to actually see his particular vision of it, which is very dark, which is very grim, is very uncomfortable, and it works. It really works. Um, he basically takes these questions and gives us answers that are twisted into just these grotesque shapes that it just fits well with the story. It fits well with the setting. It just works. As to the story itself, it's a pretty slow burn as we slowly as Nathan slowly becomes involved in events, to put it lightly. And the other thing that kind of compounds that slow burn feeling is that Nathan is a deeply introverted person. And this is a character choice that means that if you're a character driven reader, you will have a difficult go with this book, because Nathan is in no way a character that you can feel engaged and sympathetic with. He's very introverted. He doesn't speak much. You don't get much insight into his thought processes. Instead, he's surrounded by this vibrant cast of characters who are very almost larger than life in comparison to him. Um, and it almost gives you this feeling that Nathan is almost something of a lackwit in between them. All that being said, all that being said, like he is very much a person who has his own thoughts and feelings, and they do crop up in interesting ways over the course of the story. Like like this is where like Alex Pheby kind of plays with the whole chosen one trope, because we very much have a main character who almost has difficulty grasping the complexities of the situation that he's in. Like it's common for when in pretty much any fantasy book, when the hero eventually gets his cult eventually and he becomes embroiled in these larger than life scenarios and that kind of thing, he rises to the occasion. Nathan never quite manages that, and it makes for interesting reading, because what we find as a result of that is that as much as he has some semblance of his own agency in here, he's very much at the mercy of what goes on around him and the choices and decisions of others. So it like that, and because of all of that, like there's some amount of emotional distance. So like I said, I think character driven readers will have a rough go with this book. At the same time, I'm not sure it's one that would work for plot driven readers either. Like this book is just very strange, which is something I keep saying over and over about it. But how else do you describe it? But it's very clearly an intentional choice, because the other characters who surround Nathan are nothing like that, and we do have a very very fascinating cast of characters, to say the least. So yeah, that kind of gives you an idea of what to expect in that regard. When it comes to the actual writing, like Alex Pheby, he writes in a very smart way. Like the prose is accessible. There's no like purple prose or anything like that. But at the same time, he writes in a very smart way, a very unique way that kind of keeps you engaged, and also just the story that he tells. Like he goes off in some interesting directions. He makes some interesting choices. Like one of my favorite characters is one that I refuse to talk about, because just discovering for yourself who that character is, the way that they become part of the story is entertaining, to say the least. Very entertaining. That particular character proved to be the highlight of the book for me. And make no mistake, when you read it, you will know exactly who I'm talking about. They really stand out. Like even among a cast of characters who can trend towards the flamboyant as some of these characters do, he stands out quite a bit. But yeah, all in all, a really unique fantasy story, to say the least. It's one that's very much inspired by the genre, but one that sets itself up to become its own thing. And with the way that it ends, honestly, I'm very curious to see how Alex Pheby decides to continue the series, because I can't quite imagine what direction he could go in from here. I believe the title of the trilogy is a tease to what we can expect, and that helps to offset some of the decisions that he makes here. But it's going to be interesting to see what he does with this series, to say the least. But yeah, this is definitely a fantasy series. Well, at minimum, this book is definitely one to look at if you're a fan of like unusual fantasy stories. If you like almost ones with like an unusual form to it, and just something that's very different from the commonplace genre releases. Just one to look at. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about Mordew. If you've read this book, drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts, because I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it and decide what I think about it. Yeah, I think that's really all I have to say about Mordew. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.